Following on from that previous quote, here's the first question you should probably be asking. What is a strengths approach? Well, let's start by asking, what is it about problems? Why even think about making this shift? Well, here's a few thoughts that I put together when I reflect back on the experiences, discussions with people who are receiving services, particularly in mental health services. And I've tried to capture this notion that if we're applying a problems focused approach to people, and bear in mind, that is the majority of the way services are set up because people do have problems. So I don't want you to get the wrong impression. This is not an either or. I'm not anti problems, but I want to really get into your mind this need to shift the thinking. So, what is it about problems? What is a problems based approach? You'll see from this slide, it's a catalogue of what you aren't doing, you can't do, you haven't done, and you should be doing. That's only in the present tense. If we think back historically, we can also add the detail of all the other times you weren't doing what you should have been doing. And then if we project this problems approach into the future, the focus will be on getting you to do the things that you should be doing, but actually you may not even want to do. So you get the impression that the whole idea of assessment with people, it's about trying to identify all the periods of time and sources of deficit, difficulty, things that have gone wrong for them. Everything that's not in place, not coping, not working well at the moment, and in the future to be aware of all these problems and hurdles that are likely to be there if we repeat our same patterns again. And I found myself in mental health services in particular saying to people, if you weren't depressed at the point when you met with a practitioner, you certainly should be by the end of that assessment, because it will focus your attention entirely on you at your worst. So that alone is only going to build up a very limited picture of me, of you, of anybody. It is not the whole picture of us. So what is the strengths approach? It is ultimately challenging what I would suggest is a negative focus that emerges from a way I've just described, a problems orientated approach, which just solely focusing on the negative, which is not going to inspire a great deal of hope and confidence in people. We want to challenge that in some way. We want to work with it, but we don't want it to dominate everything that is in our thinking and in our approach to people, in our response to people, our response to this whole idea of trying to take a risk. How are you going to do that if all you can see is the problems? The strengths approach recognizes that whoever you are, myself, yourself, whoever you're working with, everybody has talents. Everybody has abilities, interests, achievements, capabilities, wants, dreams, wishes, all of those positive characteristics of us. And at a certain stage in our lives, and for certain people, these may not be that obvious. It takes a lot of digging to try and find them. But for the vast majority of us, this is who we really are. This is the essence of us as people. So as a result, it's very much a person-centered way of thinking. It's a person-centered way of working. It's really getting to the essence of people and drawing from them and drawing from us, ourselves, when we're applying this to ourselves, drawing this sense of what can inspire hope, the sense that we can move on and achieve things. It's that light bulb moment. Not always, but there's a good description in a way, or good capture in this image, that the strengths approach is about those hope-inspired moments. When that light bulb comes on, characteristics about who we are and our abilities, recognizing those. It puts us into the picture that's demonstrated by that particular image. Staying with this question, in a way, what is a strengths approach? Well, it's a process. It's not a one-off event. It's continually happening. We should be continually listening and learning, listening to ourselves, listen to the person that we're working with, the person that we're focused on, listening to the client. If you're running a business, who are your clients? Who are your customers? How are you going to identify what's their resources? What are their strengths? What are their desires? What are their wishes? Well, it's a continuous listening so that we learn those particular cues. We learn to focus on those particular messages, finding out what's important for them, both now in the current situation, but we all always want to be helping people to reflect on the future, a desired future. What is it that's important to them? What would they like to achieve? However grand that might be, it's still important that we have those dreams and that we can focus our attention, focus our approach on helping people step by step towards moving towards achieving those dreams. As for this whole issue of resources, it's acting in alliance with people, the resources within them, the resources around them, including family and friends, for example. From a perspective of perhaps being a practitioner in health and social care, it's about the types of disabilities that are encountered, but we need to see beyond that. We need to see the ability in the person, but also seeing those around them, the resources that are around that person, the support that they have, the people that they can rely on. We're supporting people to develop their real personal resources, focusing and tapping into their own resourcefulness. It's not necessarily that we hold all the answers. You bring the problem to me, I'll give you the solution. It doesn't work as simplistically as that. It's far more nuanced, far more layered, far more complex. Life is far more complex than that. And if we're focusing on this word resources, which I think is crucial when we think of strengths, think of that word strengths as being about resources. Those are the things that can open up opportunities. So it's about thinking, what are the options? What are the risks we could take? Well, the opportunities open up when we're aware of the resources we've got. And opportunities in themselves will provide us with a source of confidence. We know that we've got resources to take on the challenge. We can take that risk. We can really move forward with this confidence that we could achieve our desired wishes. And that confidence then breeds success and achievement. This becomes a self-fulfilling circle, in a sense, that inspires more hope and that inspires more resourcefulness. So, in the whole, the what, the why, the where, the when, the how, the where is everywhere. The when is all the time. I will touch on each of those in the resources across this module. I've been focusing here in detail on the what. The what is the strengths approach. But now I'll shift on to the why. And then subsequently we'll start to look at the how of the strengths approach. Why focus on this particular type of approach? Why don't we just focus on problems as they present and just focus in on what the problem is telling us? Well, we should be focused more on strengths largely and simply. You'll see that first point, because we don't do it with people or even with ourselves anywhere near as much as we think we do or we believe we do. And this is also a statement born out of my experience for many, many years talking with people who felt they did work in this way. But it didn't take much in terms of inquiry and observation to see that for the majority of people, it is quite a superficial, positive layer or veneer to their work. Whereas a real strengths approach is very much more of an in-depth, thorough way of thinking. And I'll come on later to say that it should become a default way of thinking if we truly want to develop an individual's potential. So if we really want to develop that potential, then we must resist what would be our natural tendencies to focus on things that people themselves are less able to change, or that they see as less of a priority for themselves. And that again is a danger. When we focus on our description of people as being problems, and we then try to encourage change, our tendency is to want to change those problems and help them in that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're focused on what the person sees for themselves or what the person sees as their own priority. And again, it will be difficult to take a risk if we're working on parallel tram lines that are a distance apart. If we're not on the same line, if we're working two slightly different directions even, that's not going to help. What about this image? We're looking to transform ourselves, our situations, our circumstances. By and large, we're thinking about taking risks. It's because we want to change today into a new looking tomorrow. There's some kind of transformation from this puzzle shape. That's where we're at the moment. But we want to get to that light bulb moment when everything does become more clear, more illuminated. And again, staying with that question, why focus attention on a strengths approach? Well, it provides the basis for developing trust and engagement and positive change. And those are important characteristics for people working within health and social care services, but even depending on the type of business or field that you might be working in. It's about trust and engagement, whether that's about employees or trust and engagement of clients or trust and engagement of customers. Being able to offer a good sense of positive change that could emerge through things like positive risk taking. Well, this kind of approach will offer the basis to engage that trust with people. And it also helps us to make this quite simple choice. Either we focus entirely on our problems or our deficits, on the deficits of the people that we're working with, and if we're focused on them at their worst, at that basement level, then by tackling what is at the lowest level, we might be able to apply resources that lift the person up a few levels. What that means in reality is we might come from a very poor level of standard to a mediocre level at best. Whereas if we focus in on the strengths and the abilities, what people can do, what they want to, what's giving them a sense of joy, that is more likely to motivate them. Then the likelihood is that we're already starting at a level for ourselves or for that person that may be mediocre or above already. And we're focusing attention now so that we can lift mediocre up towards excellence. And that'll tie in very much with an earlier slide when I was asking you to think in terms of confidence, opportunities, resources, levels of excellence. If we can achieve that's what is success, the achievement that reinforces the whole resourcefulness. The next question is, whose strengths are we talking about? Am I referring to myself, yourself, people, customers that we're working with? Well, it's an approach that can apply and should apply across the culture of, let's say, a whole organization, whatever business or field you're involved in. It's not something that we're thinking of applying just to one or two people. It's not a sticking plaster because one or two people have been identified as being problems themselves. So again, depending on where you work, what you do, it could be that you're focused on developing the strengths of individual service users, patients, clients, in terms of the business you run, the clients, the customers of the business. But we should also constantly be aware of who the others are around that individual. So who are the informal carers? Who are the family members? Who are the other supports? Not just seeing them as strengths, but how do we tap in and support and amplify their strengths as well? We should also then be thinking about ourselves. If we're in a position of being a practitioner or an employee within a business or the business owner, then it's about focusing on our strengths. What is it that we bring to the picture, to the venture? And then there's the need to work in teams. By and large, we don't work in isolation. We could be in a very defined team, or we could be part of groups of people that come together and form a team around a particular issue or a particular question, a particular person. However we identify and work with the strengths, it is important to focus on the strengths of that collective, the group of people functioning long-term or short-term as a team. And likewise, thinking of a strengths approach as applied to the whole organisation, we then need to think about how that would be supported. How would that be underpinned and driven by policy that reflects this way of thinking and reflects how the organisation develops? Or how does the organisation bring in the appropriate practical tools that help to develop this whole way of working with strengths? In summary, who does it apply to? Well, the answer to that is all of us. As I draw this particular presentation to a close, I would like to ask you to take a few moments to honestly reflect on how much of this content is actually playing out for you presently, and for the team and the organisation that you may be part of. You'll also see 2 PDF documents are linked to this content, a strengths checklist and a set of strengths-specific principles. I ask that you take the time to read both of these documents and use them as a basis for you and or your team's reflections on changes that you can implement so that you can increase the level of this strengths approach within the work that you're doing.